Do you think that when someone is killed at the hands of an illegal alien, that their representation in Congress, senator, congressman, should meet with that family?
Absolutely. Of course.
It's my understanding that there are many angel families that cannot get meetings with their senators. Have you heard that?
Absolutely. It happens all the time. As a matter of fact, the lovely and kind words from Senator Durbin, I am his constituent. This is the first time I've ever spoken with him. I haven't spoken with him. He spoke to me.
Well, I hope, and I'm sure that, I heard actually the ranking member yesterday talk about the need for the Attorney General to meet with victims, which I support. And I certainly am hopeful that he will, and others, will meet with you.
Yes.
So, Sheridan Gorman and other names need to be said. And I think the accountability that we have in this room for other people, we should be able to have it for this body as well. So I certainly hope that you get your face-to-face meeting that you deserve.
I would hope so. We've had several laws introduced, legislation introduced in this last session that have been completely ignored. And there hasn't been any way to really get in and talk to anybody, especially those who are opposed to those legislations for whatever reason.
Well, thank you so much for elevating your voice. Ms. Bazinski, am I saying that right?
It's Bensky, yeah.
Okay, gosh, I'm going to have to try. I am so sorry for everything that you've been through, and thank you for your courage, for being here today and being able to elevate your voice. I completely support your quest to be able to be heard, to obviously for victims to be protected, and for us to pursue every lead possible. And, you know, I do believe after my conversations with the Assistant Attorney General that he is going to pursue those. Let me ask you this. Were you asked in the previous administration, did you ever have an opportunity to sit down with the then Attorney General, Merrick Garland?
We did not, but there were active investigations going on because of Ghislaine Maxwell's hearing.
So, but did you ever have a face-to-face with him?
No.
No. Did y'all request a face-to-face?
This was before a time that I was comfortable coming forward. It was just this last September that a group of us felt like we had met each other, and a huge part of this has been finding the collective voice of a sisterhood and understanding that we weren't isolated in these experiences.
Absolutely. And let me ask you this. Did you, was there ever, because I know that my colleague, Senator Blackburn, really wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to tell your story. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of any Senate hearings that were held under the previous administration that tried to
I don't personally have that information because, again, I just came forward really in September.
Well, thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Oyer, obviously, are you cutting people off right on time today?
What?
Are you cutting people off right on time today, or are people getting to go way over?
I've been too liberal, but go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead and ask one more question.
Just let me ask one more question, please, sir. I appreciate it. After you were fired from DOJ, you had an independent media company and a Substack platform, and you had the, Lawyer Aura brand name and the hoodies that said hardwired to stand up to bullies. I'm wondering, it's my understanding that as a pardon attorney during the Biden administration, you recommended actual commutations for Daniel Troyer and Ricardo Sanchez Jr., who were sentenced to death in 2009 after executing a family of 4 on the side of a highway. Is that true?
Ma'am, I think you were not in the room when several of your colleagues asked me about those recommendations.
This is my turn to ask a question. So is that true?
I said that remains, which is that I'm not able to talk about the clemency advice that I provided to the White House because of
well, the victims included a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old boy who died while cradled in the arms of their mother, who was trying to shield them. Those 2 little boys were shot 10 times, and their mother was shot 11 times, and their father was shot 5 times. So I appreciate the grace on getting to go over, but that doesn't sound like to me that you stand up to bullies. It sounds like to me you stand with them. Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that note, Ms. Binsky, and for everybody who's here, all of the victims, thank you for being here. Thank you for standing up and telling your stories. Ms. Boss, thank you for being here and for telling us about your daughter. I'm sorry for what all of you have been through. So I want to say thank you and honor your voices and honor what you're doing. Ms. Oyer, if I could just turn to you. You were President Biden's pardon attorney, is that correct?
I was the Justice Department's pardon attorney.
You made clemency recommendations to the White House whether or not to pardon inmates, is that correct?
My job was to make clemency recommendations.
And in that capacity, you recommended that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, grant clemency to all 40 federal death row inmates, all of them, clear them out, correct?
Sir, as I told Chairman Grassley, I'm not free to discuss the recommendations.
Well, that's what your memo says.
President.
I mean, we have your memo. Your memo of November 4th, 2024 says, and I quote, disparity and undue severity of sentence, which are present in many, if not all of these cases, have been recognized as grounds for clemency. And you went on to recommend in that memo and a series of other memos that are now recorded and public record that the President of the United States grant clemency to murderers, rapists, and the most horrible offenders, all of them, clear death row completely out. I'm amazed you've been called here today. I'm absolutely amazed by it. But let's just talk about the people who you recommended. You talk about honoring victims. The people who you recommended get clemency and live at the expense and sufferance of taxpayers for the rest of their lives. Let's start with Dylan Roof. Dylan was a neo-Nazi who murdered 9 African-American worshipers at a Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina, 2015. Do you remember this case?
I do remember it very well.
I would hope you did. Here's his victims. Do you want to look at them? There they are. 9 of them at a Bible study in a church, killed in cold blood. The DOJ knew from day one that he had decided, I'm going to quote from the prosecutors, decided to attack African Americans because of their race. He further decided to attack African American worshipers in a black church in order to make his attack more notorious. More notorious. And yet you recommended that he be granted clemency, live at the expense of taxpayers for the rest of his life, substitute your judgment for that of the American judicial system. Do you stand by that recommendation today?
Sir, I'm not going to comment on the recommendations that I made, but I can tell you that Mr. Roof is going to die in prison as...
He's going to live in prison for a very long time because of you, because of your recommendations. And here's what you said in your memo of October 30th, 2024. You said that actually Roof is not a compelling candidate for clemency, but you recommended it anyway. Why? Because he suffered from anxiety, you said. Right? He suffered from anxiety. Did it ever occur to you that maybe the family of his victims might suffer a little bit of anxiety because he marched into their church and murdered them in cold blood because he was an incredible racist and he wanted to get on TV?
Sir.
Do you regret it?
I'm not going to comment on the recommendations
Do you regret it?
that I made to the president.
Let's talk about Robert Bowers, a man who regularly spewed such vile hatred of Jews. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. He barged into a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018 and he shot everybody he could find, killing 11 innocent people who were there to worship. A federal jury in Pittsburgh unanimously recommended the death sentence after finding him guilty on 63 counts. Here they are. They're his victims. Take a good look. You recommended clemency for this person who went in and killed these people just because they're Jews. The other guy killed people just because they're black. This guy killed people just because they're Jews. A jury recommended that he be sentenced to death, and you substituted your judgment for theirs, and now he's going to live. Are you proud of that?
Sir, what I am proud of is the fact that I took my job as pardon attorney extremely seriously.
Apparently not seriously enough. You certainly didn't take the victims seriously. Then there's Jorge Avila Torres, who wasn't just a murderer. He was a serial killer and a rapist.
Sir,
Here is who he assaulted and killed. He sexually assaulted and killed 8-year-old Laura Hobbs and 9-year-old Crystal Tobias in a Chicago suburb in 2005. And then 4 years after that, he committed another murder. He slaughtered a fellow service member, Navy Petty Officer Amanda Snell, in 2009 while she was in her barracks. That's what he did. And you recommended clemency for this individual, and now he'll live his life at the expense of taxpayers because you substituted your judgment for that of the American judicial system, jury, judges, the whole lot, and yet you're here to tell us that you're somehow a victim? I don't think so, Ms. Oyer. I think your judgment is astoundingly terrible. I'm amazed that this side of the aisle has called you, and I just ask my friends on this side of the aisle, do you agree with this? Is this what you want? Do you want these people to be pardoned and live at the expense of taxpayers for their whole lives? Do you want to excuse the murders of African-American churchgoers? Do you want to excuse the murders of Jews in their synagogues? Do you want to excuse the murders of these children? Because that's what she did, and now she's online hawking products to try to make money off of it. I see you've got your own website where you put your face on baseball caps and mugs, theLawyeroyer.com. You're trying to make money on this?
Sir,
This is unbelievable, Ms. Oyer, and yet you say you're a victim? These are the victims. And you helped victimize them. And what you're doing is wrong. I hope every member on this side of the aisle will repudiate what you have done and what you stand for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, I assume that your questions directed at me were rhetorical and that you're giving.
They're not
a speech.
rhetorical at all. I asked you to respond and you said you wouldn't. So what I did is I read to you what you have said. I quoted verbatim. And I'm happy to keep doing it. In fact, I'd ask now, Mr. Chairman, that this report, Restoring and Strengthening the Federal Death Penalty Report, be entered into the record. It contains information regarding Ms. Oyer, her recommendations, and the track record of all of it. The written records are here. I ask to be entered into the record.
It'll be, Ms. Hoyer, take a minute to respond if you want to.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I, under President Biden, just like under President Trump, had a job to do, which was to make recommendations to the president about how to best accomplish their clemency objectives. I put the utmost effort into doing that in a way that was consistent with the interests of the justice system and all of its stakeholders, which includes crime victims, as well as defendants, as well as family members, as well as judges, as well as prosecutors, all criminal justice system stakeholders. The process that I presided over was one that was beyond reproach. What's happening now with clemency is an absolute disgrace, and I'm sorry that I can't answer the questions about the specific recommendations in this public setting, but I would be glad to meet with any members of this committee who have concerns privately to discuss to the extent I can what your concerns are.
Privately, why don't you meet with the victim's family?
What happens when a Senate hearing stops being about legal procedure and becomes a battle over the value of human life? That's exactly what unfolded when former Justice Department pardon attorney Liz Oyer appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee. What began as questions about clemency quickly turned into one of the most emotionally charged exchanges of the hearing, as senators confronted Oyer over recommendations she made during the Biden administration. But this wasn't just another partisan clash. It became a debate over justice, mercy, and whether government officials should ever revisit sentences handed down for America's most horrific crimes. Let's break down what happened. The hearing began with senators listening to heartbreaking testimony from crime victims and their families. Several witnesses described years of waiting for answers and, in some cases, struggling to get meetings with elected officials. The discussion focused heavily on whether victims are truly heard in Washington after the cameras leave. That set the stage for what came next. When former DOJ pardon attorney Liz Oyer was called into question, senators shifted from discussing victims to examining her role in the Biden administration's clemency process. One senator pointed directly to two convicted killers, Daniel Troya and Ricardo Sanchez Jr. who were sentenced to death after the 2006 murders of a family, including 2 young children. The senator didn't simply ask whether Oyer had recommended clemency. Instead, he recounted the details of the murders and then delivered a line that changed the tone of the hearing. "You say you stand up to bullies," he argued. "To me, it sounds like you stand with them." The room immediately became tense. Oyer declined to discuss the specific advice she gave the White House, explaining that the Justice Department has long treated presidential clemency recommendations as confidential. But that answer didn't satisfy her critics. Another senator picked up where the questioning left off and broadened the argument. He accused Oyer of recommending clemency for every inmate on federal death row during President Biden's administration. Then came a series of cases that many Americans remember well. The senator referenced the Charleston church shooting carried out by Dylan Roof, the Pittsburgh synagogue massacre committed by Robert Bowers, and the murders linked to Jorge Avila Torres. Each example carried the same question. How could someone recommend clemency in cases involving crimes that shocked the nation? Oyer refused to debate individual recommendations publicly. Instead, she defended the process itself. She explained that her responsibility was to provide legal recommendations consistent with the president's clemency objectives while considering the broader interests of the justice system, including victims, defendants, prosecutors, judges, and families. In other words, she argued that her job was not to erase justice, but to advise the president within the legal framework established for executive clemency. Her critics weren't convinced. They argued that mercy should never come at the expense of accountability, especially in cases involving mass murder, terrorism, hate crimes, and the deaths of children. For them, the hearing wasn't about legal procedure. It was about whether victims' voices were being overshadowed by discussions of sentencing reform. By the end of the exchange, the disagreement remained unresolved. One side insisted that the clemency process is an essential constitutional responsibility that requires careful legal analysis, even in the most difficult cases. The other argued that some crimes are so horrific that any recommendation